I guess Andres says, "Oh, we're live. Look at that. We did it. We're here."
All right. So we're going to try to answer questions today. And let's start. I want to start with the people that are here. And I think they just typed the stuff into the chatty chat and then we'll see what's there. But I do think it's fair to say something about how we did record a really long webinar where we carefully polished all the pages and everything that we were going to do. I mean, I think we had like 80 pages of extremely researched and well documented what we wanted to talk about. It was and images and stuff like that. So I thought it was really good. At the same time, ever since we put that out, there have been some people that have had some questions. And it's like, oh, right, we didn't talk about that in that giant thing. And so now is the time to kind of tap into that. So I kind of feel like I don't know, has it been a year and a half or so since we put that out, or maybe over a year?
Probably.
I kind of have I made a list of some possible points that I'd like to touch on that we didn't touch on thoroughly enough in that webinar that we did. And apparently it broke some things because we went, I think, 3.5 hours for that.
Yeah.
And it turns out there's some limitations around the 3-hour mark for some stuff. So I think we're moving along. Now, so I don't see any questions in the chatty chat just yet, just chatty chats. Hey, Alan.
Howdy.
Did you see our 3-hour long thing when we did that? I don't remember. I don't think
you'll need to be a little more specific than thing.
Okay.
I just joined, so I don't know what the thing is we're discussing.
Okay. We did a 3+ hour long webinar on Hugelkultur. And my guess is that you have not seen that, but I'm sure that you know what we talked about even without having seen it.
I can probably make some strong guesses.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and start with some of the questions that are inside the forums. One of which, so we have a thread for this event, and there's one with a bunch of images on it from a guy named Ron Elk. I don't know, is he on here in the chatty chat? Is he watching right now? Just bought 10 acres. So, Andreas, can we show this guy's image, his post? Just bought 10 acres 6 months ago, Western Washington. We have a field about 4 acres. Now there's 5 forested. I'm now working on my first Hugelkultur. It's 25L by 5W. So I'm going to assume this is feet, 25 feet long and 5 feet wide, hoping for at least 5 feet high. I wish to strongly advocate for something at least 7 feet high. I already got it up to about 2 feet. I've got lots of thinning to do in the forest to add to the Hugelkultur. Okay, so he's got a lot of wood. Base was started with logs from the neighbor. When layering, can I add the grass clippings with the dirt to fill in cavities? Okay, I want to start right here. I've got just that alone. First of all, a lot of people, I believe, build Hugelkultur in a way that makes me want to face palm, and that's where they stack up a whole bunch of wood, and then once they have this nice big wood stack, then they start covering it in dirt. And I know I want to say that will not work, but I feel like I need to qualify it. I don't think that will work unless you live in some kind of rainforest. And basically they'll end up with a bunch of air between the logs underneath. And Granted, it'll end up being a relatively moist space, but I don't think your growies will like it with it having that much air in it.
So, by the way, do we know where this is located? What exact climate are we in here?
He's in Western Washington.
Okay.
Yeah, all he says is Western Washington. Have we seen any sign of him in the chatty chats?
Not yet.
Okay. So, all he says is Western Washington. I'm looking at the picture, but parts of Western Washington are a rainforest, a technical rainforest, and parts of Western Washington are not so much.
He says he's got a high water table, so I'm guessing he's on the western wetland side.
Okay. So, all right. The key is I believe that a good standard recipe is going to be put some wood down, and you're going to leave some gaps between the wood, but put some wood down to be where you want to build this thing. Cover it with soil. When you can't see any more wood, put more wood down, and cover that with soil. And then repeat until the whole thing is 7 feet tall or taller. And so that is the opposite of what I think most people do. I see. So YouTube wants me to watch all these videos. Look at this guy making the Hugelkulturs. He's so happy. And it's kind of like, and I believe nearly every video I've ever seen makes me frustrated. And Andreas has been moving that book project forward. And it's like, we got to write that book because of all the crazy. Okay, so.
So, Paul, if I'm getting it, what you're saying is, if I were trying to make a lasagna, the structure is the noodles, right? And if I put down all the layers of noodles and then decided to come back and try to put the sauce and the cheese and everything on top and think that magically it's all going to get down between all the noodles at that moment, it's probably not going to happen. I've got to put down a layer of noodles and then down a layer of sauce and cheese and then another layer of noodles. And I got to layer it up as I go so that I get the right mix and consistency from top to bottom.
I think that what you have just said is indeed true. And I want you to never say lasagna in the same sentence as Hugelkultur ever again. So there's a whole style of gardening called lasagna gardening.
I'm aware, yes.
And I hate it. And Toby Hemingway was doing it, and I lectured him for an hour on never do that again. And I believe he conceded to my points. And you might think that is impossible because Toby Hemingway is brilliant and wonderful and lovely and great. And
also, he can no longer defend himself.
Well, I did it while he was alive. I did it at,
okay.
I went and saw it, and I'm standing there with him, and I'm doing, so he, and I guess, yeah, he can't stand up right now and say, Paul's so full of shit. He can't, nothing like that. So, but
of course, Toby would have never said that. He was quite a gentleman, so he would have been much more.
I'm going to gently push back, Paul.
Yes, exactly.
So, what do you have against lasagna, Paul? Because there's some people here who are like, but I've seen the organic guys who layer the cardboard, layer the compost.
Geez, you just opened up a whole nother.
No, make it short. I'm just saying because people are not going to take you at
please
value.
Never use cardboard or newspaper in your horticultural endeavors. Never. If you're there's fools all over the internet saying to do it, and if they want to poison themselves, let them. Just because somebody is poisoning themselves and saying you should try it too doesn't mean you should. Lasagna gardening. Let's cut to the number one point that convinced Toby Hemingway that I said was, if you have a layer in your lasagna gardening that has like a lot of green, a lot of lawn clippings or weeds or the whole. I mean, the thing is that with lasagna gardening, they try to make it very homogeneous. Everything is the same. But when you have a very green layer or a high nitrogen layer, maybe it's manures, and you've got this high nitrogen layer, what's going to happen is it's going to effectively glee. It's going to become a water impermeable layer. So the rain will come from above and hit this high nitrogen layer and then run off. It doesn't go into the stuff underneath. The stuff underneath it becomes bone dry.
And that layer goes anaerobic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It goes damn nasty in so many different ways.
Yep.
It's a bad idea.
People love it because they want to kill grass, and they want to kill it now so that it can be a garden this year. And I understand their drive to do that, but they're like forsaking the long-term health of the patch.
Right. I think smothering grass is good, but doing it with poison is bad. And cardboard and newspaper, poison.
So when we've had to, take out sod, we'll get a sod cutter and flip the sod.
Oh,
right.
That's a good one.
So, and that puts the roots up in the air and and it effectively smothers it, but it allows it to decompose in place, right? So
that sounds like a much better way.
Yeah, so it's no nasties. The other thing I would say on cardboard is that using cardboard today is a very different proposition than using cardboard 40 years ago. And the reason is that 40 years ago, cardboard was a lot of wood pulp and adhesive. And so, yes, you could talk about the nastinesses of the adhesive, but today, a lot of cardboard products are not just that anymore. They might have additives to them to keep them from tearing apart if they get wet. And so the next thing you know, they got PFAS compounds and everything else they put into the cardboard. Here's a pizza box. Guess what we did? We just loaded it with these PFAS and compounds to keep the grease from soaking into the cardboard. And so, yeah, if you think that cardboard today is just wood pulp with a little adhesive to hold it together, well, maybe in some cases, but in other cases, it can have all kinds of other stuff in it that you do not expect. Same thing is true now for even paper towels. Used to be paper towels were mostly wood pulp. Today, it's like, oh, it doesn't tear apart when it gets wet. And you're like, oh, well, how'd you do that? And you're like, well, our chemical engineers decided to have lots of fun. And
I'm gonna take what Alan said and make it even nastier, and then watch as Alan nods his head as I say these things. A lot of these companies that manufacture cardboard or newspaper in a lot of different formats, or other paper goods, they have been bought by a company right next door that is having trouble getting rid of their industrial waste.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that stuff is very, very ugly. It needs to be disposed of properly. But it turns out that they come up with a cheap excuse to be an additive into the cardboard to get rid of it. And now it's your problem. And they don't have to label it or tell anybody or anything like that. It's just mysteriously taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
And now you've just taken that industrial waste and worked it into your horticultural endeavors. Please observe Alan nodding his head up and down as I'm saying these horrible things.
It's way cheaper for them. I mean, if you look at what it takes to properly dispose of certain toxic chemical compounds, it's a big expense. And if you can hide it somewhere else or push it into another process where you don't have to do that, it saves them a lot of money.
So I want to say that as you're building a hugelkultur and you got your woody bits down and you put a bunch of soil on that and some more woody bits and some more soil, what you want is to make it so that there's not much in the way of air gaps in there. Having a few air gaps isn't so bad. You don't need to pack it. You don't need to go and oh no, there's an air gap, I got to go fill it. The problem comes when you have like when your whole hugelkultur is built and you've got more than 40% air gaps in there, that's too much. And you need the moisture to be able to wick throughout. And the roots, while they like having some air gaps once in a while, when the roots get to a pocket that's a real big air gap, they don't like that. That does not jive with them, unless of course you're in a rainforest.
Yep.
And it's like, but if a lot of the work that we're trying to do is in deserty conditions. And so it's like, it's not a lot of, so, all right, when talking about this, okay, base will start the logs from there. When layering, can I add the grass clippings with the dirt to fill in the cavities? All right. I don't know if Alan's ever heard this. I know that both Beau and Samantha have heard me say this many times. I advocate for something that I call splotches. And what I want in the end is to have diversity on the inside of the hugelkultur. If you're going to mix your clippings in, then you end up with homogeneity. So if everything's kind of spread out the same over your whole hugelkultur, I don't want that. I'm for a buffet of reasons. I can go on and on. What I want is diversity. So if you've got some lawn clippings, put it in there as a blob, a splotchy blob. There are some, and over there is some, and over there is some. And then as you build up with soils and logs, and you got other materials you want to work in, specifically high nitrogen materials, do it in blobs. Oh, you got a bucket of kitchen scraps? Blorp in one blob, maybe two blobs. And at some point in time, about halfway up, I want to suggest add a bucket of really high quality soil from your best garden, but try to keep it contiguous, like something about the size of a basketball, but don't turn it up and mix it up and blend it. Try to keep it in the same configuration it was in when you took it out of the garden, and then carefully place it inside of your new hugelkultur. I call this a bioseed. And so basically all the biological activity that's inside this basketball of soil is going to expand and grow throughout your hugelkultur. But if you churn it and bust it up, it'll expose it to air and kill most of the life in that blob. So
I'm going to agree with that, Paul, because let's make it explicit. One of the things is, and on the garden soil, I'm going to push back on the other thing, but the garden soil, when you disturb it too much, the fungal hyphae get all pulled apart and the fungi get unhappy, and that disturbance takes the fungal bacterial ratio and just completely messes it up when you tear it apart and turn it inside out. So keeping the soil contiguous preserves the fungal component, and so I agree with that. My one pushback on keeping the grass clippings or the food too blobby, if you keep it too blobby, then it can again go anaerobic. So I don't like, and fresh cut grass clippings can do that, and it can grow actinobacteria and anaerobics. So I like heterogeneity. I'm going to agree with you on that. I would not keep it completely like blob of like food scraps, all one big blob together. I would spread it out just a little bit and mix in just enough, carbon-y thing to it to keep it from becoming an anaerobic bomb in the middle of the bed.
Right. I respect your concern on that.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, allow me to undo your concerns through the power of magic. See, nothing up my sleeves. Mm-hmm. And all I got is the English language. Here we go. If it's a blob, about the size of a basketball or smaller of grass clippings or kitchen scraps or something like that, I'm also concerned about it going anaerobic, but I also believe it's small enough that before it has a chance to go anaerobic, the life in the soil is going to break it up and spread it around enough and aerate it enough. Unless, of course, you've got a blob that's much larger than a basketball. But if you're talking about something that's about a basketball or smaller, it'll be fine. And the thing I want to avoid is the thing about the lasagna gardening, like spreading it out. And what I've learned over the years of talking to people about this is that if I start to say spread it out, they instantly go for a lasagna garden.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, so what I'm trying to do is to say, instead, keep it in something about the size of a basketball. Now, of course, once you put it in there and you start to bury it inside of your system, it's not going to remain basketball shaped for very long. It's going to get kind of pancaked a bit.
Yeah.
And once it's pancaked, the different life in the soil is going to go after it and keep it and prevent it from going anaerobic, as well as the fact that it's not a huge blob.
So I'm going to push back on your pushback, because we've looked at this inside of compost piles where we're looking at the life with a microscope. And so the reason I'm saying I don't like that idea is if you do the same thing, like even small blobs like this inside of your compost pile, they can go anaerobic in a couple of hours. So I'm going to throw something at you that we're suspecting now that I think is kind of interesting. It's impossible to keep all of your soil in real life from going anaerobic all the time. It's going to happen. And so we've worked with a couple of different people who've been experimenting with this. And one of the things we say is, well, get all the great aerobic biology going all through whatever you're doing, Hugelkultur garden, whatever, right? And that works really, really well. But what we've noticed is that there are beneficial anaerobic microorganisms. And if you get them going in your soil, including in Hugelkultur, what happens is when some little bit or piece of your soil goes anaerobic, they spring to life and they start doing their magic, and they competitively exclude all the really bad anaerobic things, right? So what we've seen is that whereas getting great aerobic organisms going throughout your soil, which is what you're trying to do with your garden soil coming over, you're seeding that biology in there. If you also seed in beneficial anaerobes, then it gets even better. It's like, if good aerobics are here, then good aerobics plus beneficial anaerobes goes up to here, because what happens is when that inevitable little bit of anaerobic stuff happens here, there, and yonder, now you got beneficial anaerobes that dominate that condition instead of really nasty guys. So just throw that in there as a thought.
I think you just supported my pushback. But
what I was going to say is if you would seed in beneficial anaerobes, then maybe it would be interesting. It'd be an interesting experiment to try. And that's one of the whole things is, where do you get those beneficial anaerobes? And you can do stuff like maybe, some of the anaerobic methods, like bokashi has a lot of beneficial anaerobes in it. So throw some bokashi in there,
Well, okay. When we put the material in, it's probably going to be quite oxygenated as it goes in.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you're saying as quickly as 2 hours. I would have to say, what were the conditions for that material? I would have to say that if you're putting in lawn clippings, I would have to say it's not going to go anaerobic for a day. If you kind of put in some kitchen scraps and you kind of go splort, that might be shorter, but not 2 hours. And so
but you don't have the heat of an active compost pile, so it's going to go slower.
So I kind of think that, and plus since it's small, it's going to really struggle to get any heat going at all.
Mm-hmm.
But the greater goal is, if we have diversity inside of our hugelkultur, then when we grow diversity outside of our hugelkultur, some growies are going to be like, oh, I found a high nitrogen spot. Nom, 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 nom.
Yep.
And I'm quoting the great philosopher Cookie Monster. Other growies are going to get some roots down there and discover this high nitrogen spot and go, ow, 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 no. And it's like, so now what happens is that different species that have different needs are all growing next to each other, and their root exudates of one are feeding the roots of another.
Mm-hmm.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
And so this exchange, this rich exchange, has been encouraged by having diversity in the soil. So our diversities are going to be a buffet of different kinds of things. And so high nitrogen, low nitrogen, maybe high potassium, low potassium, high potash, low potash, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And high iron, low iron, high boron, low boron, high calcium, low calcium. And so there's going to be these splotches. And then in time, there will also be some spots that are going to be very, very moist and very, very dry. And it's based on things, this, that, and the other thing. Diversity is what I want. Diversity all over the place. Yeah. And that's why
that whole thing of diversity in plant species is very important. If you've noticed, there's been a lot of move over the last decade in cover crop seeds to go from, I just planted vetch or whatever as a, to a cover crop mix now. And you can actually, you're starting to see a lot of very carefully designed 8-10 species cover crop mixes. And the reason is, and they're from different families, because as you pointed out, the root exudates actually are complementary. And when you get a certain level of diversity of plant families and of root exudates, then all of a sudden this grows a diversity of microbial life. And this interesting thing happens. We talked about it when I teach the soil classes, which is called multi-species quorum sensing. And it's this really interesting dynamic where, in a lot of biology, we talked about like single species quorum sensing, where like when a single strain of bacteria is putting out an exudate, and when enough of them get there, they realize that there's a bunch of them and they can do something new, like form a biofilm, right? In other words, it flips a switch genetically. They start doing new things they weren't doing before because there's enough of them to successfully do that as a group. And biofilms are one of those things that trigger on quorum sensing. Well, as they got into this, they realized that there was this thing called multi-species quorum sensing, where when enough diversity gets going, everybody says, hey, the party's all here. There's enough of us and enough diversity. We can now start doing whole new things that we weren't doing before because they're possible. And when that regime cuts in, now all of a sudden, all kinds of beneficial relationships start forming and things start happening. And so we now understand like the scientific basis for why this level of diversity is actually doing things that you don't see at lower levels of diversity.
I would like to expand on that a little bit. So I'm going to expand on it instead of push back. I'm going to expand on what you just said and say, I believe that there are benefits that we have not yet documented. In fact, I would say for each thing in the world of biology that we have documented, I'll bet there's at least 1,000 times more that we have not yet documented.
Yeah.
And the bottom line is that for a lot of stuff, that diversity is, I kind of feel like when you talk about a permaculture flavor of horticulture, permaculture gardening would be the thing I would be advocating for. I think that this is kind of what we're talking about. We want to have diversity, but of course there are some species that don't play well with this.
Yep.
And and then there are some species where the only way it works is you got to kind of have a bit of a monocrop. But one could go past that and argue, okay, the stuff that is allelopathic and poisons the plants around it, not a permaculture plant. We're just going to either not have it or it's going to be way the hell over there. And then the stuff that is wind pollinated, and so it needs to be in a monocrop of sorts. One could argue that we shouldn't be growing that stuff anyway. And I turn to Mark Shepard's book, Restoration Agriculture. I think he makes some really excellent points about grains and specifically. But I think diversity, it's even better than what we've been able to document so far. And as you were talking about mixes, I'm thinking of Gabe Brown's stuff. But then Gabe Brown stuff tends to be a lot of annuals. And I kind of prefer, I kind of feel like restoration agriculture was a bit of a wake-up call. Like, wow, how did we ever forget this? You know, and it's like, why was I doing Three Sisters all this time? That was dumb, wasn't it? And it's
the thing to remember, of course, is that the annuals tend to be more related to the bacteria. They tend to have more interactions with the bacteria as you move towards mid-succession perennials, such as, and a lot of our vegetable garden crops are closer to mid-succession. They have relationships with both the bacteria and the fungi, and they like soil that has sort of a biomass balance-ish. And so low disturbance, which every time you disturb, you tend to reduce the fungal dominance, right? So something that doesn't get disturbed a lot. And of course, wood tends to be fungal food, right? So when you're putting a lot of wood into a hugel, you are putting a lot of fungal food in there. And so you will, if you don't disturb the soil, then you will tend to eventually, especially after the first year or two, you will start to see fungi in the soil as a pretty, high, pretty good amount of biomass. And now all of a sudden that hugel is going to probably be better for growing perennials than for really early succession annuals.
Yeah, I want to move on to the next thing that this guy said, Ron. He says, also, we have a high water table, 30 to 60 feet down. Is it still viable to dig down a foot or two to add the height of the hugelkultur? Yes, it's a great idea. And looking at the picture that we're looking at here, I'm a little concerned that this is a little on contour, but the land is so flat, and if the hugelkultur is not much bigger than that, I think it's all right. I would prefer to see a hugelkultur that's kind of going up and downhill in a fairly wiggly shape, like as I don't know how to say that any better, a curvy shape. An organic shape as opposed to a straight line. So, but I think a lot of people read up on swales and what are the benefits of swales, and then they read up on hugelkultur and they read up on lasagna gardening, and they're kind of like, I'm going to get a three-fer. I'm going to do all three. And it's like, no, please don't do that. I think that swales are great for very hot climates, tropical, subtropical, and of course we talked about lasagna. Just ignore lasagna gardening, please. Just put it out of your mind. And so now we're down to just hugelkultur, and I think we're doing it in a cold climate. And the key is what we want to do is to try to get our hugelkulturs in such a way that we can extend our growing season through a couple of very simple things. And so if you've got if your hugelkultur is kind of, and this is the above view, they kind of have a little bit of a swirly to them, then I think that's going to be better because you're going to have diversity and sun harvesting amongst many other things. But then if you've got a curve in your hugelkultur, again, from the above view, and you've got another hugelkultur over here that kind of interlocks, then when the wind is blowing over your hugelkulturs, it can't get down in between them. And I think that's going to be a great season extender, because if the wind can't get down in between, and it looks like in this field, there's a whole bunch of trees far away, which means that your hugelkultur is going to be under attack from the wind, because those trees are too far away to help get the wind to go over your hugelkulturs. So I generally up and hill down, kind of a squirrely shape, and interlocking squirrely shapes. So that way it keeps the wind out. Wind is cooling and desiccating.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I don't think if the water table is 30 to 60 feet down, I'm not going to worry about it. In fact, I would say that if you dug down 3 feet and you had some trees that were like close to the bottom of where you dug, something with a taproot, maybe started from seed, maybe it'll find that water and it'll become a giant tree and share water with all of its buddies.
Yeah, he says that's a high water table. I grew up on coastal Florida, and that's we could go in the backyard with a shovel and dig down to the water table. I mean, it's like, nah, I don't think of that as a high water table.
Once set up, we plan on making another hugelkultur to make a somewhat D shape without connecting the two. Okay. I think when you do the curved shape, I would avoid having that curve pointed uphill, because if the curve faces uphill, you will be making a frost pocket, and by having the wiggly downhill hugelkultur, that's going to allow your frost mass to move on downhill without disturbing your stuff. But if you make I guess if it's going to be a disconnected D, it's kind of like, I suppose you could look at it as a letter I and a letter C together, sort of, kind of, not really, but sort of. And so, but there's a little bit of slope to this land, it looks like. And so I wouldn't want the cupped part facing uphill. Let's see, the next part is, I have a downed cedar tree I'm somewhat planning to use as the base. I know from the Hugelkultur Smackdown, lots of info, video, that cedar is rot resistant. I think it's going to be more than that. Growies do not like cedar, and there's a lot of reasons why. Cedar contains 4 allelopathic elements that are in the wood, and that's why it rots so very slowly. And so, and also why when you go to a cedar grove, you don't see much other stuff growing in the cedar grove. The cedar is very good at killing off its competition. Now, all conifers have these 4 allelopathic agents. However, like fir or pine, they have a lot less. And so you can use fir or pine inside of your hugelkulturs. They will present the exact same problem, but it's something where the upsides are much bigger than the downsides. But cedar's going to be, the downsides are probably bigger than the upsides, and it's probably not going to do the things that you want. Now, on the other hand, if you go to a rainforest, you'll see that cedar is a very dominant species there, and you'll see cedar behaving as a nurse log. But how old is that dead cedar? I would guess a couple hundred years old. It's been sitting there rotting away ever so slowly to be a nurse log, and it's still there in a rainforest.
Yep.
So I would say, do not put cedar inside of your hugelkultur. In fact, I wouldn't want it within 10 feet of your hugelkultur. I have used black locust as a border on hugelkultur in the past, but black locust is pretty inert. The growies won't put roots into it, but It doesn't exactly actively poison your growies like cedar does.
So yeah, the thing to remember is pretty much every tree species has to have some antifungal compounds, so they don't get eaten alive by the decomposing fungi in the soil, right? And so what happens is when the tree dies, it stops producing new versions of that compound, and that compound breaks down. And different trees, those compounds break down different rates. It's part of the reason they tell you if you're going to inoculate oak with mushrooms to grow mushrooms, wait when you've harvested the tree, wait a couple weeks before you inoculate the wood, because it takes a couple weeks for the oak antifungal compounds to break down. So you don't want to stick all your fungal spores in there while it's like, just still alive and has all those antifungal compounds in it. So you let it wait a couple weeks. But there are the wetter environment that a tree has to live in, typically the more aggressive it has to be in antifungal compounds. And so a lot of really wet rainforesty, especially tropical trees where there's constant attack, have a lot of antifungal compounds, will break down slowly and will resist they'll resist that. So they become less desirable to go into a hugelkultur.
All right, I think we covered Ron's stuff here pretty good. And there's a thing on the screen now. Good morning. Does orientation of hugelkultur matter, generally speaking, north, south, east, west? I would say orientation matters a lot, just not orientation to the sun, because whatever shape you make it, and whatever orientation you end up with, portions of it will be facing every direction of the sun. But this is what you want. You're going to end up with diversity. So on your here on the northern hemisphere, the north side is going to be cooler. It'll have less sun than the south side. And so some plants are going to like it more and some plants are going to like it less. And some plants are going to like sunrise more than sunset. And it's like, so that it'll all sort itself out in time all over your hugelkultur. So this seems to be a big thing that a lot of people get really stuck on. How do I make it do a wavy thing downhill and simultaneously orient it to the sun the way I'm thinking I want it oriented to the sun? And it's like, leave the sun out of it. The sun will take care of all of its own stuff on its own. Don't worry about the sun. Any of you got any thoughts about sun orientation?
Well, I think it's really interesting how much you can have the south-facing, dry, hot areas, and at the same time have a beautiful, wet, north-facing side. And you have completely different stuff growing, totally different microclimate, and on the same hugel within a few feet of each other. You can have a nice protected place to be out of the hot sun, and then have a baking side on the other side. It's really, really cool.
I think most food plants appreciate half-day sun more than full-day sun. But there are some species that will thrive under hotter conditions. Mm-hmm. And so having diversity is good. Plus, the next thing is like you might have it baking on one side, but the roots might be able to reach over to the other side where it's a little cooler.
Yeah, and where it can stay nice and moist. Especially a bigger plant with longer roots can really get into those nutrients and that moisture that's on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
We've had rhubarb last year that stayed with us through the fall. And I'm used to rhubarb going dormant in the summer, but I think that was a big part of it. It continued to find water deep into the hugelkultur. But then the rhubarbs that we had that were growing on a very sunny southern exposure spot, and we hadn't built the soil there yet, those rhubarbs did go dormant in the summer. But the rest of them just kept pumping out rhubarb all year long.
That's so cool.
It also changes the flavor, whether you're on a sunny side or a shady side. a lot of people report that the flavor on the northern side tends to be sweeter, and then the flavors on the hotter side tend to be spicier.
Yeah. Now remember, Paul, you're up at a higher latitude, and when we do design classes, I make everybody say sunward or poleward, because if you're in the southern hemisphere, it flips. So okay, but then if you're in the tropics, and I want to talk at some point before I have to get off here in a while about how hugelkultures perform in different climate zones, right? And because it's like it changes a lot, but like in the tropics, you get the sun almost overhead, which means you get sundown on. You can get the sun down coming down on both sides because the sun's mostly overhead. So you have variations. The further you are from the equator, the more you have this really high polarity between the sunward side and the poleward side of a hugel as it's moving around. And that sinuosity you're talking about helps to create even further microclimates, including partial day shade, as the sun is coming up, or partial day shade from maybe the late afternoon hot sun, things of that nature.
So on this call, we have Andreas, who I think is not too terribly far away from the equator. And when he tells me stories of how today is hot or cold, it's like, oh, that's just like, oh, he's freezing to death. It's 68 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yes.
And it's like, it's the coldest it's been all year. But if Andreas can pop
He's
himself
watching
in
out
here,
for those cross pockets there, Paul.
If Andreas can pop himself into our little collection of talking heads, I think that, hey, Andreas, why is it that you don't want to have hugelkultur where you are?
Hello. Yes, because the wood would decompose very, very fast, and then the mound would go flat. Like I would say that like a 7 feet tall hugelkultur would disappear in like a year and a half tops.
Wow.
Yeah. So where Andreas is, what's brilliant and smart and worth all the time and pollution and all that stuff tied to it is biochar. Biochar is brilliant where Andreas is. And where I am in Montana, it's like, why would I want to ever do biochar? I can do it, like, it's 10 times easier and cleaner to do hugelkultur. So this kind of conversation reminds me of the Poisonwood Bible. Alan, I'm sure you've read the Poisonwood Bible. And I'm guessing that Beau and Samantha, you have not read the Poisonwood Bible?
No.
I got the Cliff's Notes from my wife. Does that count?
And so in the Poisonwood Bible, basically a guy from Georgia goes to Africa and learns that gardening is it's too different. It is just a bad idea to do Georgia gardening in Africa. That's there. I saved you the whole book. And I mean, he goes into details about how comical it is to try, but and there's of course more to the book and other things, but blah blah blah.
When we're teaching design patterning, one of the very first things I tell everybody is, if you don't know when you shouldn't use a tool, then you don't understand the tool. It's like that's one of the things I wanted to say. Paul, when should you not use hugelkultur? And obviously, wet tropics is one of them because of the decomposition. It's just going to go right. The other question is, when is it too dry for hugelkultur? Is a situation when it's too dry and that going up, you might not want to go up and have it shed water, but you might want to do some other pattern. I don't know. It's a good question, right? So is there any situation where it would be too dry to do hugelkultur?
I don't think
too
so.
wet?
I think if you're, in fact, I've done this one about 20, 30 times. Well, the problem is that this particular piece of ground is swampy a lot of the year. What do I do? Hugelkultur. Yeah. The problem is this piece of ground that I have is really dry. We only get 4 inches of rain a year. What do I do? Hugelkultur. And it's like hugelkultur solves all sorts of stuff. So too wet. The only time I could think it might be a problem is if it is a rainforest, like it's so wet, you have the problem of the tropics, even though you might be in a temperate climate.
Yep.
And it's like, But the other thing is it's like everything keeps growing, and you don't, why would you want to take the time to even build a hugelkultur?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the people that live in a rainforest aren't asking like, hey, should I build a hugelkultur?
Right.
But I think that the people that are living in places where it's like they water their garden every day.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, let's see if we can save you, 90 to 99% of your water by doing hugelkultur. Here at my place, we got our hugelkulturs on solid rock. And so when I hear people like, oh, my soil's got so much clay, it's impossible to do hugelkultur. It's like, oh, I wish I had solid clay. That'd be great. I could do such great things with that. I have solid rock.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've done miraculous things. Now, the last time you were here, I think we were just starting to put in the well that year.
The well came online when I was there.
Yeah. And so you went and measured some of our hugelkultur stuff, and you're like, oh, it's not very biologically active. But now, because if you're building soil without water,
Mm-hmm.
it is an extremely slow process.
Mm-hmm.
And last year, I think, was the first time we really started to get our irrigation game happening. And we have a soil probe, and we test our soil fairly regularly. And we started to see the soil getting really built. We're getting some spots with really black soil now.
Mm-hmm.
But we do have some spots still that are kind of like the stuff that you tested, which we call moon dust.
Yep.
And so because we are on solid rock, but we had that one patch where we could go to what we call a rachis, this I don't know, half acre, quarter of an acre. Yeah, I think it's a quarter of an acre on the lowest spot on our property that's very sandy. It's got a little clay in it, but it's mostly sand. And it's definitely quite sterile. And and we bring up scoops of that and put it in with a bunch of wood, and we got to slowly mix soil. I've been yammering on for a long time. I can't even remember what the question was. I'm going to pretend we answered the question. Oh, look, and there's a new question. North Central Missouri here. I hope I'm pronouncing, is it Missouri? Or is it, okay, I'm going to pretend I'm pronouncing it correctly.
It's not misery. That's all I know.
Looking forward to making my own hugel bed after the wood ages from the trees blown down in recent tornado. I wouldn't wait. I mean, the only time I might wait is if it's going to be like willow, because then you're going to have a million willow trees. But most wood doesn't take off like that. I would say fresh is fine. I think a big thing is that so many people are like, I want to build the world's most perfect hugelkultur, so I'm going to wait and I'm going to go get the best materials. I think that a better idea is to say, I'm going to build a quick hugelkultur this year, and maybe I'll build a better one next year. It's better to have 20 hugelkultur beds than to have 0, because you're waiting for all of the planets to align or something like that. So I would use it green, unless it's something that's going to just start shooting up a skillion little sprouts of trees, and then you'll never beat that. But I think
for most hardwood species, the antifungal compounds will break down in a few weeks.
Yeah, I'd say, and that a thing that makes me absolutely crazy here in Montana, and I'm sure it's other parts of the world too, is that people feel like their yard is untidy, and they had a bunch of branches fall off, or there was a windstorm and there's a whole tree that's down or whatever, and they burn it. I mean, like in a pile, like in their yard or whatever. And I just kind of feel like, what a horrible waste. And And if some people just need things to be tidy all the time, I'd much rather see them make a tidy that is a hugelkultur than to burn it. And then I kind of feel like, okay, if you're going to burn it, how about if you heat your home with it in such a way that it burns cleanly instead of polluting the state? You know, and it's like, it's, to me, it's just maddening to drive into Missoula in the wintertime, and it is just so smoky. Mm-hmm. And most of it is from people burning brush in their yard. But every once in a while, you'll see a house and the chimney is a little teeny tiny chimney, but it's putting out so much smoke, it's just smoked out the whole valley. And it's like, well, that's not a rocket mass heater. All right, I already forgot what the question was. Northeast Kansas here. Hey, this might be for Beau. If a tree dies from a disease and no one's there to hear it. No, wait, it's a different thing.
That's what it sounds like. Sounds like a riddle.
If a tree dies from a disease, would there be any concern of using the wood from that tree in a hugel? Oh, that's a good question. I think I'd use it. I can't even think of what I might be concerned about. I mean, the disease came from nature. I think if somebody poisoned it,
if it's glyphosate disease or something.
Yeah. If somebody used a persistent herbicide, and this is a fairly common problem that I've seen a lot of, where this tree died for no reason. It's just it just got sick and died. And what it actually died from is they sprayed like a broadleaf herbicide. Right. You know, something where the grass will live. And it's like, well, that tree, is it a type of grass? No. The tree took up the herbicide and died. Mm-hmm. And now, if it's a persistent herbicide, or even if it's not a persistent herbicide, it's still in there. I wouldn't want to use that. So natural disease, like no one sprayed anything, I think it's fine. Anybody want to take that one on? Anybody want to counter it?
Well, I wouldn't counter it, but I mean, why was the tree susceptible to disease? You know, was there some low-level toxin in its environment? You know, do you really know? I think if you really know, then maybe that's fine. But the tree was sick for a long time and died. We don't really know what it got into.
If it's on your property, then did you spray it? Probably, yeah. Probably not. You know, hopefully not.
Right.
And,
yeah.
Well, if it's a natural disease, trees die all the time, and that's the perfect tree to use in a hugel.
Yep.
What is the lifespan of a tree? Is it 10,000 years, or is it like 80 years? In which case, if you've got 1,000 trees, some of them are going to be dying this year. Wherever you have a plethora of life, you must also always have a plethora of death. It will always be 1-to-1.
Yes. I would say if you're at all concerned about it, just make certain that you have really good biology in your hugelkultur as you go. Really seed it out with really good biology, because it's the good biology. It's like in a natural system, that tree would have fallen down and decayed into the soil, right? Would that sick tree have destroyed the forest? No, it would have fallen down. And if you had good soil biology, it would have quickly, been decomposed and returned into the soil. You're just increasing that soil wood interaction and holding moisture next to it in a hugel, right? So it's a natural process. You're just accelerating it slightly by positioning the wood where you're positioning it.
I think we should go back just and emphasize one more time, where are you sourcing this? We keep talking as if we're sourcing it from our own site. A lot of people here are in a suburb, and like there's, Alabama is doesn't have very many trees. So where's Alabama getting her or his trees for the hugel? I avoid right of way by the highway, because once or twice a year you drive down the highway and you just see scorched earth death along the fence line. And that's the stuff you don't want to import. But if you know the farmer just outside of town, and if you can go 50 feet beyond the highway fence and take some of his standing dead stuff and a couple of small scrub things, that's going to be good stuff that I mean, it's not a sure bet, but if you know that farmer and you're far away from the public right of way, I would be, in an urban context, I would be content with that risk.
Yeah. And we have to clean up those kinds of toxins. And guess how we clean up most of those toxins with bioremediation? By using the same really good soil microbiology that we use to get your garden soil. It's like right after the hurricane went through Western North Carolina, I started getting calls from people over there. I think Paul actually referred them to me. And, they were saying, hey, we're organic gardeners. We don't know how to clean up all this mess. And it was like, you're already like doing really amazingly microbially rich composts, and you know how to do compost extracts and all these kinds of things. You're already 80% of the way there. You're actually the people in the area that know how to clean this up the best. And so we went in and showed them how to use that soil microbiology to clean things up. And really the only people that have successfully cleaned up some of this stuff are the people that are using that soil microbiology to clean it up. So, don't get too scared of it. I mean, yeah, be very careful, be mindful of what you're doing, but also realize that if you are engaging the soil microbiology and getting it really strong and working with it in a good way, that it can break down a lot of these compounds. It may take a little bit of time. In some cases, we were able to show that we could break it down by 80 to 90% in a couple of weeks. So, but in other cases, it took longer. So just understand that it's not, if you're looking at compounds like glyphosate or 2,4-D or these kinds of things, Grazon as a whole is different. Grazon is harder to break down. So if you're looking at something that's Grazon or Grazon Next, I'd be very careful about that. So just we've seen that is highly persistent, and it takes a lot more for biology to break it down. So if you're working around fields that have had Grazon or Grazon Next applied to them, I would be really careful of that, because that's some very nasty and highly persistent stuff. It will persist through a compost pile. It will persist through the rumen of a grazing animal. So if you have fields that have had that applied, and a cow eats it, and it goes through to the cow manure, and then you put that cow manure into compost, and you compost it, and you bring it out, guess what? The compound is still there, and it can still hit you, and it can persist in the soil for 5 to 7 years. So that's the one that I constantly warn people about, because it's so nasty. So just be really careful. And if you're working with anything that's really close to Grazon, I would be very careful of that.
I want to say an obnoxious thing right here. And it's like, I'm so glad that I made the transition decades ago out of doing urban gardening and into homestead gardening. And on this path that I'm on, I have become a homestead bigot. And it's going to be that people keep asking me these questions about, like, I'm trying to do this, and then this, this happened and that happened and the other thing happened. And it's like, it just sounds like there's 15 different nightmares all piled up. And they're like, and I want to grow a permaculture garden. And I'm thinking, if you can get anything to grow, you're going to still be eating poison for the next 10 years.
At some point, you need a change of scenery.
It's so much easier. Like when I shopped for land, it took a while, but I found land that was covered in weeds, and it's like, here we go. And it's most of the land that you see, it's like, oh, here, look at my field. It's pure grass. And it's like, no, thank you. No, thank you. However you did that, I want no part of it. But now you're going to do Hugelkultur. It's like, okay, so here I am on my acres, and trees fell down, and they just volunteered to go inside of Hugelkultur, and they're surrounded by weeds, and I know I haven't spread anything here. It's like, and I don't have to move it very far to get to where I'm going to go with the Hugelkultur, as opposed to people that are like, oh, I went over 7 miles away and got a tree and I brought it home, and it was an urban thing, and it died for no reason. And it's like, oh no, I don't want anything from anything urban, because no reason always seems to work out to be persistent herbicides. So I really want to, and then I know most people aren't going to like this, but boy, I kind of feel like if you really love permaculture, homesteading, not the urban thing. Beau, you were saying something?
Yeah, I was. Yeah. So when I was living in urban Kansas City, I was living right next to this place called the Bannister Complex. You in Northeast Kansas, you probably know where I'm talking about. It's also known as the Honeywell facility, one of the most significant arms manufacturers in the country. And they put it in this beautiful little valley near, what was it called? It was called Boone Hill, and just ecologically gorgeous. But of course, they decided to build the most toxic and harmful stuff known to mankind there. They shut it down in, I want to say, the 80s, because there was some like 85% cancer rates in all of the neighborhoods within a quarter mile of this place. So they shut it down, and that was right in my backyard. And I love walking through the woods, and I was hunting for mushrooms. I knew better than to eat a lot of the mushrooms that I would find wild. But in the 2000s, they started asking for proposals to remediate that. What do they call it? It's like a brownfield site or whatever.
Brownfield, yeah.
Yeah, yep. It's like one of the most toxic sites anywhere. Like, it's beyond repair. It's inhospitable to biological life in many ways. But they requested proposals for remediating this site. And among the proposals was mycoremediation, where they would carefully demolish the buildings and structures, deal with the like super hazardous stuff in a certain way. But then for the site itself, they were going to import all of the area's wood chips that are a natural byproduct, and then they were going to inoculate it with a concoction of fungal species that are known for binding to these persistent toxins, and accelerating its half-life so that it'll biodegrade into its constituent components more rapidly. It was a beautiful and elegant solution. Of course, the proposal that got the deal was 10 times more expensive, and it's where they took the top 18 feet of soil and they took it elsewhere and dumped it over there. So that's the one they chose. And I was watching all this happen, like the proposal process, the selection process, and then the work that was done. And meanwhile, at my family farm, 4 hours away before we moved out there, we had a dump like you do at a lot of old farms. And it was a pit that they originally dug so that they could incinerate my great grandmother's mobile home. They didn't have a good way to dispose of the mobile home, so they dug a pit and they just doused it with accelerant and burned it. And when I was growing up, they would put all their fluorescent bulbs, all of their paint. My great grandpa laid asbestos roofing, and they would dispose of that in there and burn that. So it was just kind of the normal rural thing. And after watching this thing at the Bannister facility take place, this is a very long story to say, I don't see potentially toxic wood matter as a threat. I see it as like, it's there, and it has to be my responsibility to be part of the remediation problem, part of the remediation approach. If it's going to be anyone's. So we've started converting our pit into the place where we put everything that's potentially suspect. And we put big limbs in there, and we crush it with the tractor bucket so often. And then we throw all of our good spores in there. And, it's a very unscientific approach. But we do see a lot of oyster and lion's mane and turkey tail coming up out of the pit. And of course, we do not harvest it, but we do let that sporulate and populate the surrounding area. And I will harvest subsequent generations that are coming up elsewhere. So I mean, there's a lot in the chat about like, well, what do we do with this toxic stuff? And we have a very like short vision when we're talking about sourcing materials. And
Yep.
what we're advocating for in this conversation is being careful with your inputs into your food system. But what we're also saying is there's good things to do with the toxic stuff.
Yep.
If it's on your site, that can be part of a productive, proactive solution.
Yeah, thank you, Beau. Let me say something really quick. I've been pulled into several circumstances, and we'll push this back around to Permies here in a second. I've been involved in several circumstances where we've had these kinds of problems. I helped conceptualize response from some of the community. They came and asked me about for the Lahaina fires, after Lahaina fires in Maui, and other places like, you know, bioremediation in Western North Carolina after hurricanes and so forth. What's really interesting is that the way of thinking about all of this is to deal with it with more depth. And what I mean by that is to use mechanical processes, because exactly right. What you're going to do, same thing that Army Corps wanted to do and did in Lahaina, was take all of that that soil, pick it up, take it and try to bury it and so forth. It's like there is this suspicion of partnering with life in order to create more life. It's really interesting, right? It's like all the engineers, because I'm an engineer, I've been trained this way. The way engineers are trying to think is in like this mechanistic, reductionist, death-oriented way of dealing with all this. Oh, well, we got to take this and put it into a pit somewhere and bury it and get it away, instead of partnering with life. And what it turns out is that over and over again, we've been able to show rigorously and scientifically with lab tests and so forth that partnering with life is actually more effective and way less expensive and solves the problem. And even when we can show that, what happens is oftentimes the mechanical dead approach wins, because that's what people are more comfortable with. They're not comfortable with the uncertainty of dealing with life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think one of the big things that, you know, we're doing when we're having discussions at Permies is like, hey, we're partnering with life to create more life. And that's one of those things like, you know, Paul's, when you're talking about growing food, it's like, you know, we are engaging with life in a way that, you know, allows life to thrive. I'm trying to get my head around how to say this really succinctly, but it's like there's a difference in mindset that's very foundational. I guess what I'm trying to say, right? Which is and we need to realize that if that life gives us ways of dealing with most of these toxins if we just engage with it. There's a few that are really hard, but for a lot of them, we have ways of solving the problem.
I have about 200 hours of stuff to say about these things, but mostly I think I'm tired of talking. Like, why is it permaculture people are required to regurgitate this stuff about toxicity? But even more than that, I think one of the things that I find really frustrating is how so many permaculture people are drawn to these places where there's so much poison in the land, and they're like, now I'm going to grow food here. And it's like they see it as their personal mission, that if food can come out, it's proof that they've healed the land. And I kind of think, well, you got something that looks like food. I don't think anybody ought to eat it. And rather than exploring the idea of growing food that's basically poison, but it looks like you could eat it, which is a bit of a novelty, really. And it's like, and please don't eat that. I like the idea, can we instead start with clean land and grow food in such a way that it has, I'm going to make up a number of 100 times more value than the best food you could buy at Whole Foods. And so I like that path better And I wish that those people that are so keen on trying to do something with a toxic waste site could instead have a clean, like start with a clean slate.
Yeah, the problem is that land is becoming more and more scarce and more expensive.
True.
And so I would agree, Paul, you don't just start trying to grow food into toxic land, but there are techniques for cleaning up brownfield sites that have been polluted before you start growing food and getting them back. So if all you have, if what you've inherited that you can afford, because it's what's under your feet that you own, is already got problems, I'm just trying to say there are ways of fixing that, and you should fix it before you start growing food in it.
And I got 200 hours of stuff to say down that road.
Yes.
And at the same time, what I'm trying to emphasize is like, I'm weary of that conversation. I've been down it so
we're
many
here
times.
to talk about Hugelkultur. Was that right?
And we're going to get back to that.
That's the thing is, if you're doing Hugelkultur, you're actually coming above the level. Like whatever went in the world before, you get to build with the best materials on top of that. And we only can eat so much food in a day or in our lives. So to me, I want it to be the best. So I'm going to get the best materials and create the best environment to grow my food and for my family. So yeah, it's not going to be the brownfield site. That's great to heal that. But to me, it's like we only get to eat so much. So let's make it be the best.
So, all right, here we go. Next question. I was given a rather deep water trough. Oh, no. Oh, I haven't even read the rest of the question and I hate it already. Okay.
It's okay, Paul.
I have straight up hickory flooring. Oh, no. That I can put in it. Oh. All right.
Now, the hickory flooring is a locally milled, just the actual wood. It's not covered in who knows what shellac.
Okay.
But the water trough probably is a galvanized metal one.
Okay, let's start with the galvanized. It's poison.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything galvanized is poison. And it's like hell, I remember in high school going to the science fair and I did pretty good, but one of my classmates did even better. And his whole thing was about measuring the toxicity next to a grain silo that was galvanized and how things wouldn't grow near it and why. And his analysis as a high school kid was pretty great. But of course, his dad taught chemistry at the local college, so he might have had some advantages. But still, the research that he did in high school, it was pretty straight up easy stuff. And I'm sure that so much more has been done since then on research. But anything galvanized is terrible. Now, let's say it's not galvanized and it's painted, and it's like, now you've switched from one problem to another problem. Is it stainless steel? No. Is it aluminum? No. Okay. So I would not want that water trough on my property, let alone growing food in it. All right. Next up. If you've got a water trough, it's like, I don't know, let's make up 4 by 8 and it's like, and it's really deep. Let's say it's 2 feet deep. And it's like, that's what you're thinking is going to be your garden. And it's like, okay, so that means that you have a growing surface that's the top, 8 feet by 2 feet, 16 square feet. On the other hand, if you were to try to do a similar sort of a thing with a hugelkultur, that means you take that surface and you flip it on its side and you got another growing surface on the other side. And by the way, let's go ahead and make the thing taller. Now you've got 4 times more growing surface. And if there's hugelkultur on the inside, then, all the benefits from that. But it's like, I don't know why people want these water trough shaped growing beds. I have never seen one that I would approve of on my property at all. let alone for gardening. And so I'm just against them all out. So before we go on to the flooring, has anybody got anything to say about the water trough?
Well, that's the whole point of the water trough galvanization or the paint, is that it doesn't rot. I mean, that's why people pay money for that kind of stuff, so it doesn't rot away. So yeah, you don't want it. You don't want to eat it.
Okay. I think I can, if somebody just does plain old Hugelkultur for free, it'll be easier to move into place, and there won't be any toxicity, and you'll have more growing surface. And by the way, rather than limiting yourself to whatever is the height of that water trough, let's go to 7 feet tall or taller. And so the water trough is too small for 7 feet tall.
Yeah.
All right. Hickory flooring. I would have to say that, if I would have some concerns about what's in the hickory flooring as far as like metal. Did you get all the metal out? You know, because that hickory flooring was attached to where
it's not. It's scraps from a brand new milled flooring job.
Ooh.
So it's clean wood. It's just really nice stuff.
Yeah, I'd say that's going to be fine. I don't know of anything in hickory that I'd be concerned about.
It's got jug loam, but that's got a half-life of a couple weeks.
Okay.
It's after it's dead, it's fine. Yeah.
I would say that the hickory itself, hickory wood, is going to be fine. And the size is going to be fine. Now granted, in Hugelkultur, the bigger the chunk of wood, the better in general. And definitely do not put like sawdust inside of a Hugelkultur. But this stuff's kind of like the size of branches, which is great. So if it doesn't have any contaminant on it and no metals in it, I think you're going to be great. So I hope that helped. Are we good with this one? Ready for the next one? Ooh, there is another one. Regarding the squirrely shape, what about overlaying half moon shapes up and down the hill rather than longer snake-like shapes? Sure. I'd say the curve is what's important, and interlocking curves is what's important. And of course, the neat thing about what you're suggesting is that now you can walk around a little bit easier.
Yeah, she's trying to make it so that it's not such a long hike from different parts of the garden.
Just more paths between the tall stuff. That makes sense.
Right. I would say that if you did a long snake shape, you're going to get more crop per acre than with the moon shapes. But with the moon shapes, you'll get more of you loving your crops per acre.
Yeah.
Okay, because it's like you're standing there next to something and it's like, oh, I want to get the thing on the other side. And it's like, oh, I have to walk all the way over there. I have to walk all the way down and walk all the way back. So I would, you get to move through it easier. I would also say that with the longer snake shapes, it does block the wind a little bit better. So it's
if they're nested, it's still going to do pretty well and pretty tightly packed around each other.
True. I would have to say this falls into the space of artisan's choice. And maybe
I think
you can do a little mix. Sometimes it'll be kind of snaky and sometimes it'll be kind of moony.
There's this site called Interwoven Permaculture in Indiana inside the Shawnee National Forest. They've got 170 acres. It's very flat. Their spot is cleared. And when they first got the land, they built massive Hugelkulturs like what you advocate for, Paul. But they designed it like an artisan might. It's kind of like a koru sort of leaf with nested bits, and it's broken in places for access. So theirs was like the far end. Rather than improvisational, building it as you go, they mapped it out, and from an airplane, it's this beautiful design, and it still accomplishes kind of everything we're talking about.
That can be kind of cool. I think that would be kind of fun. I was about to make some whiny, pissy sounds about mapping it out ahead of time, and it's like
cool.
I like the idea of you just start doing it and you evolve your designs instead of like, you draw a map. I kind of feel like almost anytime a person draws a map, that's the beginning of the failure. But
the best laid plans are always fodder for the next iteration, and it evolves. But
this sounds super cool. Like who cares if people can take a picture of it flying over in an airplane? But I don't know. It's got a little bit of coolness to it.
Artisan's choice, like you said.
Artisan's choice. Why not inoculate biochar with fungal spore and add with soil layers to Hugelbed? Well, I would say the primary why not would be the word biochar. Why do you want to not biochar? And it's like, okay, there's many ways to make the char, and most of them are going to be like, I'm going to take wood and I need to heat it up so that the pyrolytic gases will, go away. And then I'm left behind with char. So somehow you heated that up. Well, how did you heat it up? Did you burn a bunch of wood? Did you burn a bunch of wood in a really smoky fashion, which is how almost everybody does it? No. Once in a while, people do it in a cleaner way, but it's still they're burning wood down to ash to make some wood that's the char. It's a lot of work. And so a lot of times the wood's right there next to your hugelkultur, but you're going to pick it up and pack it over to someplace else in order to process it over maybe a day, maybe several days, and then pack it back and stuff it into your hugelkultur. And it's like, man, that was a lot of hassle and work. And then for most people doing it, they put a bunch of smoke in the atmosphere that we know that nobody needed. And now they've got something that is almost as good as hugelkultur. So
now I get to tell you why Paul is wrong.
Go on.
We find biochar very helpful in certain circumstances, especially when you have very sandy soil that we want to be able to get to retain water more quickly. We'll do conservation burns. They're incredibly clean if they're done properly. They can be done right on the site. They don't need anything. And Paul, we'll have to get you a video of one of the conservation burns. If they're done properly, they produce almost zero smoke. They're very clean. We can produce a large amount of biochar in just a couple of hours with very little work. And there is a little bit of ash, but you stop the fire before you produce a lot of ash so that you actually preserve the biochar. If you don't stop it before it burns down, you just get ash instead of biochar. And then we can inoculate it. So we've found it very helpful when we have highly sandy soils with a very low CEC that can't hold on to anything, that also drains water real quickly. It can be a great way of jump starting that, and we'll add it to sandy soils. Now, never added it to a hugelkultur, but if I had to build a hugelkultur with extremely sandy soils, I would experiment with it to see what it would do. I would agree, Paul, that there are people who do biochar production really wrong and produce a mess, and it's a lot of work, and they produce a lot of smoke. If you do it right, then I'll just tell you, if you do it right, you shouldn't be doing that. They should not have a lot of smoke production. It should not be a lot of work. So it is the difference between knowing how to do it right and then like doing it wrong.
This feels like Jack Spirko talking about how the ethics lead to good choices. And And he can prove it because he'll stand there next to anybody making bad choices and yell at them. And it's kind of like, there's the bottom line is that what I see is people using the ethics to do horrible things. And it's kind of like, so for every person who does it really well, a really nice, clean job, I think that there's probably 25 that are doing something ridiculous and smoking.
That's why we're training them to do it right. And we're getting success.
And you're right. You keep saying if, and I'm kind of thinking like, yeah, there's a lot of iffy sauce all over that one. And it's like, and so the bottom line is,
for anything that's like, it's like me saying, well, we can't do Hugelkultur because a lot of people do it wrong, right? And so it's like, no, Paul's going to tell you exactly how to do Hugelkultur well, okay, because it's a valid technique when it's done well. But there are a lot of ways of doing it with stupid sauce attached, okay?
Sure. Yes.
Same thing for biochar. It can be a really great tool in the right circumstances when it's done properly. So that's what I'm saying. We've had good success with it.
Great cation exchange capacity. Right? That's you said that. You said
it improves. It gives you a quick up on cation exchange capacity. The other thing it does that's really handy is it mimics soil organic matter so that you can get the soil life going much faster in certain circumstances.
Okay. Great cation exchange capacity. How does it compare to wood that is not charred? I think it's about the same.
It's actually better.
Like 5% better, 2% better. I would imagine
it can be a lot better because it's got a lot of surface area with a lot of ionization points on it.
So I'm gonna come back to, I think it's about the same, but
it's far superior. But is it worth the energy input and the risk of doing it poorly? That's the question.
Energy input is the wood burns itself. We don't add anything except the wood itself.
So
if you're doing it right, sure.
Yes.
I kind of feel like, and if people do Hugelkultur poorly, they're going to still probably have fairly decent success. And I appreciate them doing Hugelkultur poorly so much more than if they were to go to try to burn the wood in a big pile. I went up to a resort, a permaculture resort. I think it was like last fall or the year before. And it was November and the whole valley was just full of smoke. And everybody was burning their scrap wood, including the permaculture resort. And it's like, because it was untidy and they wanted to tidy up, and they had zero Hugelkulturs anywhere of any kind. Yeah. And so anyway, I just kind of, I have feels about biochar. I do think like Willie Smits has so much to say about biochar, but he's in a tropical area. Mm-hmm. And it's doing great magic there. And right. And it's like, and I imagine if Andreas pops back in, he's probably done a bunch with biochar and had great results as well. And Hugelkultur is a really bad idea in a tropical area because it just doesn't last. So you put all that work in and you don't get all the benefits. But the other thing is that while the biochar will last 500 years, and your Hugelkulturs here in Montana will generally last something like, well, it's going to be a half-life thing. So it's going to probably have a half-life of, I'm going to guess, 30 years. And the biochar probably has a half-life of, I'm going to guess, 200 years. And so I think that it's going to, it's a big benefit in the tropical areas. But I also think having some of it in a Hugelkultur in big blocks and chunks, not a bad idea. As a bit of diversity. But I kind of also feel like when you heat your home with wood, you end up with bits of charcoal. I got a couple mason jars right next to my rocket mass heater here in the house. And sometimes I go to open it up and clean it out. And it's like, oh, look, I got a little chunk of char right there. I'm just going to drop it in the mason jar. And so I get about 2 quarts per year from that. I can use it for all kinds of stuff. There's all kinds of things that use char for, but I'm not a fan of biochar in cold climates. And I know a lot of people really are. And there's ways to do it that's cleaner. And I just kind of feel like I'd rather use that wood in different ways than do biochar myself. But I know so many, it is very exciting in tropical areas, and that excitement has worked its way up to the northern climate. Now, Alan, you're in a very warm climate. I would think that you're in a space where it's an edge case. You know,
I'm in warm temperate. To me, biochar is more a question of the soil type we're working with, because of the way it interacts with the soil. So, yeah, I mean, I agree that because of the way that I won't get into all this, but because of the way that the dynamics of tropical soils work, biochar has been a major thing there for a long time in certain cultures. As we get further north, it's not 100%. It's more like if we have certain types of soil or dirt to work with, then biochar can help us move that forward and get productive very much more quickly. That's when we use it. It's not 100%, right? It's more like, oh, in this case, biochar is handy. The other thing is that when we have we use it in bioremediation because it has a lot of really powerful abilities to help in bioremediation. So if we have a dirty, I don't want to get back to the brownfields, but if we, okay, then biochar has some really great uses there as well. And it's basically like a charcoal that could like activated, not quite activated charcoal, but it can bind up a lot of stuff.
Yeah. No, there you win. You definitely win there. Yeah. All right. What's the next question? Do you need to have gardening or off-grid skills to join Wheaton's community in person? I would say most of the people who arrive here have never gardened. They've never held a shovel. They've never held a hammer. They've never held a drill. And I'm thinking, like right now in my head, there is a guy who arrived and he had never held any tool. He had never grown anything. And I remember seeing him after he'd been here a year and a half. I saw him up on the roof, and I was just and he was repairing something. He was in charge of it. I mean, like he had done so much in his time here that he was our go-to guy for damn near everything. He had learned so much. And I just savor that thought because I kind of feel like the stuff that we do isn't rocket science, other than the rocket mass heaters maybe, but it's pretty straightforward, simple stuff. And I think, I mean, when it comes to horticulture, for example, I've gone down some very sophisticated roads, including biochar, and it's like, and I learned this all could have been 1,000 times easier. I could have gotten to where I am now without ever having learned the phrase cation exchange capacity. And it's like there's some brilliant stuff in the world of permaculture that makes all of this 1,000 times simpler than it is for other people.
But who doesn't love to say cation exchange capacity? It's just so gratifying,
didn't you?
Exactly. And multi-species quorum sensing.
Come on. We're here because we love to geek out. Don't deprive us of that.
Alan convinced me a few years ago that I needed to work the word biophilic into my vocabulary, and I fought it for a while, but then after he said it, it just kept coming up over and over and over again. And now I kind of feel like that is a great word to pursue. Mm-hmm. I feel like we have some people who come here who arrive with some skills and they want to unlearn some and learn some new things. And we have some people here that come here and they've got no skills at all. And I don't know. I mean, what I want is to end up with 20 people who live here year round. And we've had smackdowns recently where we're talking about like, that's probably going to happen real soon as things begin to change. Andreas keeps telling me that in 2 months, permaculture is going to 100x. And so we'll be full, just boom, the boot camp is full. But the thing, I think every day for every boot is easy and delightful. And so when people come and they don't know, they just kind of like, well, today we're going to do this thing with the garden. And so you're going to be doing it elbow to elbow with somebody else and just kind of do what they do. And then before you know it, a month has passed and this brand new person is doing amazing things. And we recently had somebody who got tired, but she was trying to keep up with other people that have been here a long time. And we keep trying to tell her, you don't have to keep up. Take 5 like a dozen times a day. We expect that. But she didn't want to look like a slacker. So she worked hard and she was just exhausted at the end of each day. But I think there's also people here who are like, oh yeah, I'm going to take 5. And it's like, I don't know how many times I have to say it should be, every day should be easy and delightful.
In many ways, for many people with a certain set of goals, it's a very gentle on-ramp to skills and productivity. It's really cool.
Yeah, I like the thing where I think it was Joseph Lofthouse and Helen Attow both said something about how they don't want interns because 19 out of 20 interns, that at the end of the day, they could have gotten more done without the intern. And so I kind of feel like I want to take those 19 and have them be here for 6 months to a year. And then they might be that 1 out of 20 that they're okay with. And we've had that happen. We've had some people that would come here for a while, and really what they want to do is go be an intern with Helen, and do that. Joel Salatin was talking to me about something like that for a bit, and I should get back to him on that.
Yeah, and Paul, at some point, I'll be ready to do the same thing. I need some hyper advanced help at this point in time because of what we're working on.
And so, are you looking for somebody that's been here for 2 years? I'm guessing.
At the moment, because we aren't land-based yet, what we're doing is actually very academic. But so I need somebody who can actually like jump in and help us handle the more academic side of things as we're dealing with other and helping other groups to doing things on the ground. Yeah.
What's the next question? Do we have another one? How would you incorporate hugelkultur in an area that has livestock rotating through it? I would do it easily. I think that how would you rotate livestock without hugelkultur? This is crazy. So I would have to say that you're going to have your paddocks. You're going to have hugelkulturs in your paddocks. And when the time comes that you're going to move animals into the paddock, I might want to run out there and harvest what I want to harvest out of there before the animals do the harvesting. But I think that, there's quite a few different schools of thought in paddock shift systems. And many of our paddock shift experts point to the other experts and say, that guy's an idiot and he's doing it wrong. I like the idea that when animals have consumed about 30% of the material that's there, that they move on to the next paddock. So if you have a garden with a bunch of hugelkultur there and stuff like that, and then first, before the animals go in, I'll go harvest what I want out of there. Then the animals go in, they eat 30% and move on. The amazing thing about paddock shift is your growies love it. And so now you're going to get more, like you will get more garden by pulsing the animals through the garden than if the garden was completely fenced off. I'd like to get a little validation on this point. Alan, do you have any data to back up what I'm saying?
Yeah, it of course does. I mean, what you're saying is in general true. There are some species that are more responsive to periodic disruption like that have been well adapted to it, but a lot of species will respond to grazing pressure by flushing back out and yeah, and resetting in their production mode a little bit. So it can be a way of freshening up and getting certain plant species to sort of like reset and go again in terms of flushing fresh growth and setting fresh, fruits and so forth like that. So, and that high impact low dwell time puts a lot of positive disruption in. It can put in, urine and manure from the animals and so forth. I mean,
in
obviously,
a diverse fashion, in a diverse pattern.
Yes. I mean, obviously, there are a few kinds of crops that don't respond well to that, but.
Well, they don't respond well to that depending on a bunch of things. But then when their neighbors have been set back a bit, the roots will then decompose and feed the soil, which will then feed the plant that doesn't respond well to it. It now suddenly responds well to it.
Yeah. So that's why diversity is handy in this case. Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, right now we're pulling grasses, but if we had grazers in there, they would prefer the grasses over the other plants. Whereas browsers, of course, will just piss me off and need to go visit the freezer because they're gonna leave the grasses and wipe out all the things I want to eat mercilessly. So, in fact, I'm thinking at the moment about the damn goat that got into our paddock this last winter and wiped out all our kale. So, but okay, how would you incorporate it? I think I would incorporate it very well. I think it's almost a required thing. Of course, people are currently doing paddock shift systems without any hugelkultur whatsoever. But I think it's a great perk to any paddock shift system. What's next? Can hugels work for all soil types, sand, clay, loam? Yes. Can black walnut be used? Ooh. If so, does it need to be aged first? I don't think aging it's going to make too much of a difference. The big thing is like the juglones. And so some people believe that the juglones shouldn't be feared as much as it is feared. But
I'm one of those people.
Okay.
Don't freak out. It's fine. It's fine. It's got a very short half-life in the soil.
The other thing is that juglones is an exudate, but if the walnut is no longer alive, is the juglones effectively gone? Now
it stops exuding very fast. As soon as the moisture either leaves it or is replaced and diluted into the moisture that's in your hugel. It's I mean, I've looked at the data, and different parts of the plant have different amounts of juglone, but for all parts, the more surface area it has within 2 weeks, whatever is like within a half inch of the surface is neutralized. So someone said, should I age it first? I was like, just age it in your hugel. Just and then wait, 2 weeks. The thing is, you stockpile materials. Very rarely have I seen someone go out and harvest their wood and build the hugel like the same day. It's usually like a 2-week process. You're stockpiling stuff for a few months at least. At Paul's place, maybe you have a lot of people working and it's more rapid. But even then, age it in the hugel. Just keep moving forward. Don't freak out about walnut. Same with hickory. It's related. Pecans, they all have some juglone, and it'll all be gone or negligible within a matter of weeks.
I have always imagined, this is an unscientific imagining, I have always imagined that the branch has like 5% the juglones that you would find in the roots. You've got that. Okay. It's like maybe.
I think that the thing people attribute to juglone is a percentage of the impact of the juglone and a majority the impact of the drip line. And you would find that in all trees, Juglone has some impact, not nearly the impact of like the pH impact of cedars and allelopathic substances and those types of trees.
I know I've seen, I was at Inspiration Farm in Bellingham, Washington, and Brian Kirkbliet took me to a black walnut and pointed at this area where there was a bunch of foam on the ground. And he said, that's the juglones right there, is this foam that we are observing here. And that's part of what makes me think that it's a root exudate and not necessarily so much in the branches.
Yeah, maybe. Bonnie's here in the chat saying, I used 5-year-old walnut split firewood in the bed where my berries died. And I don't know. I mean, there's an anecdote. What else could have killed those berries is my question. 5-year-old walnut. I've used walnut up to 50% of the contents of my entire garden in Kansas was black walnut. And some of it was fresh and some of it was 10 years dead. And I don't know. That's my anecdote. Everything grew very happily.
I know a lot of people are very nervous about using black walnut in hugelkultur, and I don't have a real good, clear answer, or like any experimenting that I've done. Like, okay, this was black walnut and this is cottonwood, and let's see who wins. I think cottonwood's going to always win.
Cottonwood wins, but you don't get to choose always. If you got a ton of walnuts on your property, figure out a way to use it.
I wouldn't use black locust inside of a hugelkultur just because it won't break down. I wouldn't use cedar inside of hugelkultur because it'll kind of poison everything. Black walnut, I've always kind of had a big question mark on it. And if I got something else, I'd use something else. But if all I got is a mountain of black walnut, I'd probably give it a shot and see what happens.
Yeah.
But at the same time, even the people that are the most concerned about the allelopathic effect of juglones, there's like a third of 1/3 of all of the food species that you could grow are perfectly happy with juglones.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so
that's part of my deal is I'm growing like 87 things. So when 13 of them die, I might not even notice. So, I mean, those types of impacts get lost in this paradigm of like radical diversity of contexts and vegetation.
All right. What's our next question?
That's it.
Oh, man. And the timing's about right. I know that there were some other things that I was kind of tempted to touch on. Please do not make level hugelkultur. I've seen people like dig a trench and put wood in there and call it hugelkultur. Please don't do that. I mean, I guess there's some benefit, but I don't like it.
Are people allowed to do it and call it something else?
That's another thing too. Is it's like hugelkultur. Part of it is it's mound culture. And where's your mound?
It's a filled trench. It's trench culture.
Yeah, and it's like, but really, what you want the mound, and you want it to be nice and tall, in order to be able to reduce wind if nothing else, but also to triple your growing space. And so the level gardens are for tractors. And it's like, and I kind of feel like if you're going to make your garden level for the sake of a tractor and you don't have a tractor, that just seems dumb. I mean, now if you want the food that's on the ground, you got to like bend over to get it. And now you're going to have to irrigate, even though you put wood in the ground. It's not enough really too. So, the whole thing about this, and I see it, YouTube's like, look at this great hugelkultur idea. And it's like, it's so frustrating to me. And short hugelkultur, if you're going to take up some space with hugelkultur, please go big. The stuff that's like a foot tall, it's like, I don't know. That just seems like almost pointless. It's the big stuff that makes a big difference. It starts to break the wind and give you moist spots and drier spots and diversities. But when it's only a foot tall, I don't think it gave you any diversity. I mean, you're still having to irrigate it a lot. Whereas you can get 7 feet tall, you can in time eliminate irrigation. Sepp Holzer would even be able to, if you start with rich enough soil, you can eliminate irrigation immediately.
It's not pointless, it's half pointless. If half of the point is composting trees to give nutrients to your soil, it accomplishes that. But the other point is texture on the earth, protection from the elements, and it eliminates all of those points. Half pointless.
I guess what's frustrating to me is that they make something like a foot tall, and it does not have the benefits of something that's 7 feet tall. And then people point at it and complain. And they say, I thought it was going to eliminate my irrigation needs. And I thought it was going to all these other things. And it doesn't. It's so all Hugelkultur therefore sucks. And it's like,
it's a bit of a fallacy.
It's like the beginning of the failure. So I wish for people to build 7 feet tall or taller. So let's see. I already talked about one of these. Oh, good. Too much wood versus the right amount. I want to say that in my Hugelkultur article that I made like 20 years ago, I've got some images of Hugelkultur, and Sepp Holzer looked at that and he said too much wood, and I agree. In fact, yeah, I've got a lot more to say about that image in particular, but Sepp Holzer is right and that image is wrong. And yet people keep trying to copy it, and it's like I should get in there and update that. I'm sure Andreas is chomping at the bit to change it as we speak. But too much wood. That image is too much wood. Purchase containers, we talked about that. I want to add a quick tidbit about we did this years ago. We built our Hugelkulturs, and then we built scaffolding to go on the side so we can get up there, which we never finished. And it was just like all this work, and I would have to go out there and whittle at it to get it to work and stuff, and we just never finished it. But when along the way, one of the things that we started doing is getting some blocks of wood that were like 20 to 24 inches long, nice big chunks, and putting steps in. And it's kind of like doing a keyhole garden, but it's steps. So you kind of get the benefits of the keyhole, but even more growing space. And so, but my Hugelkulturs here, just outside this building, they're 11 feet tall. And we've got trails on some parts, but now we're putting in these blocks of wood as steps, and those are the best. They are just fantastic. The scaffolding, I'm probably going to end up taking it all down at some point, but I just wanted to make a shout out about the steps. All right.
The scaffolding are a great teaching tool for roundwood timber framing.
Oh yeah.
Even if they're not as functional as your new tech for Hugel scaffolds.
Well, and the big thing that we really need to is that when people put the log in, the horizontal log, it should get soil underneath and soil behind it, and the top should be flattened. And those three things, people aren't doing them. And so it's like, I learned what I wanted to learn about roundwood timber framing.
Right.
And now I'm going to bolt. And so it's like, but. And so, yeah. All right. Do we get any more questions?
Well, of course, while we're looking at that, you realize you got me off reading the peer-reviewed science, right? So the best answer I can come up with is 65 micrograms per gram of jugalone in black walnut wood, which is twice that of English walnut, by the way. And so that concentrate, and there's no, they have not been able to, there's no good literature I can find right now on what the half-life of that is. Half-life in soil is pretty short. Like, that's been really well studied. Juglone half-life in soil, in biologically active soil, juglone in biologically active soil can be like a week or two, right, of a half-life.
Right.
So it's slower in wood. The authors of this particular study in the abstract say that the juglone concentrations were lower than the level that would be expected to adversely affect most plants. But another study I found said that it could be high enough to impact sensitive plants, including some of the Solanaceae like tomato and.
Oh, there you go. I'm allergic to all Solanaceae. That's
Okay.
why I don't experience any negative effects from juglone. Okay. There we
go. So, yes, it's apparently not. It's like, and it can have some the wood could have some precursor compounds, precursors to juglone, possibly. So, yeah, there you go.
Thanks, Alan.
Yeah.
See, is there an age limit for the boot program? I would say I don't think so. We've had people in their 60s here. I know that. I know that the youngest we've ever had was 18 in a day. But I don't know. I'm trying to think of like if we've had anybody where being old. I know there was a woman here who was 68. And so I don't think there's an issue. Should I put nitrogen-rich layers on my hugels? If so, under or over the main soil? I would say yes, under or over. If you're building it, yeah, so it's the only opportunity you're going to do for inside the soil. Do it now. And now, if the hugelkulture's been there for 3 years, yeah, over, in fact, we do Ruth Stout composting, and so we'll go to a spot and pick a spot that's like a foot away from other growies, and we'll go splort of whatever's in the bucket, the kitchen scraps. Then we'll put a bunch of wood chips and sawdust on top of that, make a little lumpy pile, and then. Now, some people might be concerned about going anaerobic, but I think our soil is so rich right now that whole bucket of stuff will be pretty well dispersed in a week by the earthworms and other soil life. And so I'm not concerned about it going anaerobic. Also, I kind of feel like if somebody were to go and do that same splort and do a compost pile, it'll be just as anaerobic in the compost pile while waiting until there's enough material in the compost pile to start turning it. So I think that we're miles ahead, but that would be a high nitrogen material that we're putting on the surface. And when we do chop and drop, we just slap it down on the surface and walk away. And so there you go, on the surface. And then if we're going to build a new hugelkultur, then we'll probably do some chop and then carry it over and drop it inside as we're building it. I think that answered the question. Are there any more? Is that it? We done?
We're done. I think that's it.
Okay. If you like this sort of thing, come on out to the forums at permies.com, where we talk about hugelkultur, homesteading, and permaculture all the time.